If you're a live bait fisherman, live wells are very important, and we could do a whole video on live well design. But some simple things you want to look at. First off, you don't want any hard edges in a live well. So you want rounded corners so that the fish aren't bumping into the corners and they can swim around in a circle without sort of dead ending into a corner. In addition, it is nice to have a clear lid here. There's nothing worse than going and spending 20 minutes, an hour catching bait, throwing it in the live well, starting to run out to your fishing grounds only to realize that someone has turned off a switch or something like that and all your bait is dead. The nice clear lid lets you check on it easily, make sure that everything is doing well in there. Another thing a lot of people don't think about is the location of a live well on the boat. And that's a lot of times limited by the size of the boat and your only leftover room where you can put it, also by how much seating you have in the back. But nonetheless, if at all possible, you want the live well more on center line. Not only is that because there's going to be a lot of weight in here once you have water in it, so you want that weight on center line. You don't want to have that weight one way or the other, so it's going to tilt your boat, okay? Another thing about having the boat, or the live well on center line, is because when people are fishing, especially if they have twin engines on the back, or there's more space taken up on the back here with engines, people tend to congregate to the corners, okay? They feel more comfortable like that. They can fish off the side of the boat instead of having to reach the rod out over to the back end of the boat. If the live well is in the corner, people are going to be standing around that live well. You're always going to have to be moving people out of the way to get into that live well. Another thing about the live well is, like I was talking about all the lids and accesses, it's very important that the lid of the live well be as close to as big of the circumference of the live well as possible. And the reason being is because, especially when you have a big live well, okay, and you are getting low on bait, it becomes very difficult to get that bait at the bottom of the well, especially if you have a little teeny opening. A lot of people put live wells in their leaning posts, and you end up having a very small opening. That lid only opens about 45 degrees, and it would take you all day to catch baits in there. That's not a good thing. You need to be able to get the baits quickly and not exert a lot of effort. If you have a live well over in the corner, that live well, the only way you're going to get capacity with that live well is to go down and have a deep cylinder. That deep cylinder is going to have a small lid on it, okay? Because you don't have the space to have that big opening, and you're going to be reaching your arm all the way down in there trying to catch a bait when you need it. It's not a good setup. So if you're going to be fishing, a fish box is important, all right? And there are a couple things that are really important in having a good functioning fish box that are overlooked all the time. First off, you want a lid that's easy to open. You don't want multiple latches here that have to be undone, okay? Things are going to be happening fast at this point. You're going to have a fish flopping around on the gaff probably, or somebody who's just getting ready to land a fish. The situation is chaotic. You want to be able to open this very easily and quickly. You also want it to be able to open all the way and stay up. That's critically important. This lid has friction hinges on it that allow it to do that. You don't have gas shocks in here that obstruct the opening. There are a lot of boats out there, and make sure you look at them if you're looking at a center console fishing boat, where the lid maybe opens this much here for the fish box. That's a terrible thing. Think about having to get a big fish into that opening with a lid like that. You're basically going to have to drop it on the deck and slide it into the box itself. That is not the way these things should work. You should have the lid completely wide open like this. Very easy to get that fish in and out of, okay? Also, just like on the other parts of the boat, it's important to have those deep lid troughs, important to have that big drain. You don't want any kind of detergents or anything else being able to get into this box and soil that fish. So you really want these boxes to drain really, really well. Obviously, if you're using them a lot, you're going to want them macerated. On some boats that's standard, other boats it's an option, depends on the boat. But anyways, really take a look at the fish boxes and make sure they're going to work for you. So another thing that's overlooked is rod rack design, okay? And what you want to look for when you look at a rod rack is, obviously you want to make sure that it can fit the size rods you have. I see oftentimes where the rod rack's back here and you might have a washdown or something that's back inside the rod rack that's going to completely impede having a rod in that rod rack at all. So keep that in mind. Also, what's really important is that the rod rack has some length to it, especially as it pertains to where you're going to put the front of the rods inside behind the gunnel wall. Okay, You want those to be far enough forward so that you can easily get rods in them. If you have, let's say, a 6-foot or 7-foot rod, if you have those tubes back in this area, you're going to be trying to put that rod in like this. You're going to be bumping into the transom area. The only way you're going to get that in there is take that expensive rod of yours and force it in there. It's going to rub along that sidewall and tear up the guides and everything else. Also, it's going to be very difficult to get in and out. And a lot of times you want to be able to get to that rod quickly if you're in a fishing situation and the fish pop up. So that's very important. On a lot of boats, especially smaller boats, instead of using a covering board like this, they'll use a plastic rod rack, okay? And and it can even be fiberglass, but more often than not, it's plastic. It actually, you have a sidewall here, they cut that out, and you bolt that in or screw it in. The problem with that is, over time, what often happens is that around those screw holes, you start getting cracks. Also, because typically it is a plastic box, it discolors. So now you have a box that's not the same color as the rest of your boat, and it just doesn't look good. And also, oftentimes it's not long enough, like I said, to be able to easily put those rods in and out of. But really pay attention to that when you look at boats.